Well, hello, welcome back to Supposedly Fun. I am Greg. It is cold and snowy where I am. Don't know where you are, but I hope you're staying warm wherever you are. Or if you're in an area that's hot, I hope you're staying cool. Anyway, I shared my 2020 reading goals yesterday. My theme for the reading year 2020 is read outside your comfort zone, and I have two goals that are associated with that. One, that I want to get outside my comfort zone a little bit by reading, increasing my reading of authors who are from areas other than North America and Europe. And I want to try to read some genres I don't usually read or don't engage with, and maybe challenge myself to try some genres I just kind of avoid, or books that will challenge my comfort zone. So that's the theme of the year. So I thought it would be fun to do a sort of TBR, and I say sort of TBR because if you have followed along at all, you know I don't really do well with TBRs. I like having a little bit of agency to change my mind. Sometimes I plan to get to things, don't get to them because other things come up. So I'm going to list a bunch of options that I can go to if I need something that will fit these, if I'm looking for something to read. Will I get to all of these? I don't know. Plus, there are a lot of them. I have them all piled up next to me. This is just one pile of things. So will I get to all of them? I don't know. But let's do it, and let's start with the smaller pile that I have next to me and talk about some books in genres I don't typically read that might be good options to help me meet my 2020 reading goals. The first one I mentioned yesterday, it's The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a sci-fi book. I don't read a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, so I feel like this would be a good place to go. I mentioned I did read an Ursula K. Le Guin book in high school. I don't really remember it very well. So I'm looking forward to getting to this. This also has a bit of like gender fluidity in it, so it kind of ties in with my reading goal from last year, which I want to continue, which is that I wanted to read more books that feature lesbian, bisexual, transgender representation within them. So this would definitely work. I know Ursula K. Le Guin also has the Wizard of Earthsea series, so those could also work. But I definitely think I would like to get to The Left Hand of Darkness in 2020. Getting into other genres, there's one I haven't really gotten into yet, but I'm going to be reading. It's C is for Corpse by Sue Grafton. I have read up to P is for Peril, I believe, and then Sue Grafton died, and I decided I wanted to go back and reread the whole series. I only managed to get to A and B. That was in 2018, and I didn't manage to get to any of them last year. So I want to get back to that, and this prompt seems like a good excuse to do it. It's not outside my comfort zone, but I've really struggled with mystery thrillers lately, so I feel like this is something I know I can depend on within that genre. And everybody needs a bit of a win sometimes. Another book that I have owned for a really long time, maybe 15 years, is The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. This is a horror book. Obviously, if you've heard of the movie, you know what this is about. I just thought it would be interesting to read the book at some point. The movie, of course, scared the pants off of me. I saw the first maybe 15 or 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of it when I was a kid because my father was watching it, and I was so scared I left the room after that. For some reason I decided that because the girl who gets possessed in the movie and the book is 12 years old, I thought 12 years old was like the window in which Satan could possess your soul, so I lived in mortal fear of turning 12 for the next 3 years. And then when I made it to 13 without being possessed by the devil, I felt like it was a win. Just a fun little fact for you. So if I get to this in 2020, maybe it'll be a way of honoring that weird story from my childhood. Another book that would be within the horror genre is The Terror by Dan Simmons. I've also had this one for a long time. It is a proper chunky book, but I've heard really good things about his writing. It's kind of like a literary horror kind of thing, which I know a lot of people have a sort of knee-jerk reaction to because genre is okay, and to call something literary horror kind of implies that the rest of it is not good. So, point just being, this would be a good one to get to, and definitely in a genre I have not read a whole lot of. Another area I mentioned yesterday, potentially kind of a little bit more children's books or middle grade books or YA books. This was on my TBR for last year, which was shockingly ill-informed because I don't think I really got to any of those books. But that's a story for another time. It was my first year on BookTube. I had only been on BookTube for maybe a week or 2 weeks when I did that video, so I didn't plan it out very well. But oh well. Anyway, I'll Give You the Sun. It's something that every time I mention it on my channel, people tell me I need to read, so I need to read it. I just need to read it. It's by Jandy Nelson. It is a YA book. Getting into some books that I don't have in front of me that would also fit this area of my reading goals. So funny story, Regina Lemoyne commented on my video from yesterday and recommended N.K. Jemisin. And I actually bought a book, the first book in one of, oh God, I don't remember what series it is, of N.K. Jemisin's. But I bought it for my niece because she loves Game of Thrones, and apparently she's really into sci-fi fantasy right now, so I thought that would be a cool kind of feminist African-American author that I could throw her way. And I wanted to get a copy for myself because I knew at that point I was going to have this goal, but they only had one copy in the bookstore, so I sent it to my niece. So I do actually have my eye on that one, would like to get to it. I think that would be a really good one. A lot of these other ones are kind of just ideas, and if you have recommendations, please let me know. I feel like I should read a Western, and part of me thinks, well, if I'm going to read a Western, I should just grab Lonesome Dove, because I've heard, I think that's one of Brian at Bookish's favorite, is it one of his favorite books or favorite movies? I don't remember, I think books. I've heard really great things about it. It was my grandfather's favorite book, for sure, I know that, and it's on my Pulitzer Prize project, so I feel like if I'm going to read a Western, I should probably go with that one. But part of me also feels like I should go with something of a more straightforward Western. Not that Lonesome Dove isn't, but maybe I should read Shane or something by Louis L'Amour. I don't know. If you have thoughts, let me know. Because I'm not very familiar with the Western genre at all, but that's the whole point behind this. And just the very fact that Lonesome Dove won the Pulitzer Prize project means that it's kind of in my path anyway. But so it feels like that would be a gimme, but maybe I should supplement it with something else. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud. And God help me, I feel like I should read something paranormal. Maybe that could be like a teen book. I already read the first Twilight book, so please don't recommend that to me. That one was enough. I don't want to do it. That, I think, is going to be the genre that would be the hardest for me, because I feel like it's the one that prompts eye rolling, like, almost immediately. I just don't get it. Don't get it. I remember... I was working at Borders. Stephanie Meyer released The Host, and somebody came into the store and asked if Stephanie Meyer had any other books because they loved the Twilight series. And I said, oh yeah, she has a book called The Host. I'll show you where it is. And she was asking about it, and I said, well, it said it was about aliens. And she stopped and just said, wait a minute. So it's not about vampires? And I said, no. And she said, well, that's not sexy. And I said, okay. And then she said, tell me a little more about it. So we went and got the book, and I showed her the jacket, and she said, no. I only read vampire books. This is too unbelievable. And just walked out of the store. And I don't know. I always have that kind of reaction when I think of that when I think about kind of paranormal romance-y stuff. So I feel like that one's a hard sell for me. Maybe I should try. I don't know. If you have a recommendation, drop it down below. And then the really tough one for me is going to be poetry, because, well, not the really tough one, because my bias is against paranormal romance and all that stuff. And it's not that I have a bias against poetry, it's just that the hurdle I've placed in front of poetry is very arbitrary and of my own making. It's that I feel like I don't understand it, so I get frustrated very quickly. Maybe it's like an imposter thing. I just feel like an idiot. And maybe it's not as bad as it is. I don't know. But I traditionally have this roadblock against poetry, so that is absolutely something I need to read more in 2020. I need to read a couple. If you have recommendations, please drop them down below, because I get overwhelmed and I don't even know where to start. I'm a little intimidated by the idea of picking up like Leaves of Grass and doing that. So keep it a little bit simple. I don't know. But I would appreciate help, because I'm definitely struggling with that one. Getting into the books that are outside North America or Europe, let's get into that. The one I mentioned yesterday was Isabel Allende's The House of the Spirits. Isabel Allende is South American. This is a book that has been on my TBR for a very long time, and this would be a good excuse to finally get to it. Interestingly, fun story. So Uzodinma Owela technically does not qualify because he was born in America. But he is of African descent. His father is from Africa, and this book heavily deals with Africa and immigration from it. So I feel like it doesn't quite get there, but it is still something that I want to read. It's called Speak No Evil. I mentioned it a couple of times because it also fit my LGBTQ theme for last year, and I just didn't get around to reading it. But interestingly, when I was looking up Uzodinma Owela to see if he was born in the United States or if he was born in Africa, I learned that he was Pete Buttigieg's roommate at Harvard. Who knew? I just thought that was interesting. So, I don't know. Technically, he doesn't qualify, but I feel like the theme of the book kind of still gets at it, and it deals with the legacy of Africa. So, maybe. And then there's another book that's been on my TBR. This is another one I mentioned in my TBR last year, and I would still very much like to get to. It's Confessions of a Mask by Yukio Mishima. This is about the protagonist is gay and has to hide it in Japan and Japanese society. So he feels he has to wear a mask in order to get by. And he just hides behind it. It sounds devastating and wonderful, and I would love to read it. And this goal of mine would be a great excuse to finally get around to doing it. Now, about a decade ago, I read The Woman in the Dunes by Kobo Abe, so this goal would be a great excuse to finally get around to reading one of the other books by him that I have in my house, The Arc Sakura or The Boxman. Either one would work. I really loved The Woman in the Dunes. It is one of my favorite books, so I would love to read more books by him. Then there is Yasunari Kawabata, winner of the Nobel Prize for Literature. I have Snow Country at home. I feel like that would be a great one to do. It's only small, so should be doable. But I've had it on my shelf for a really long time and haven't gotten around to it. So this would be a good excuse to do that. Another thing I've had on my bookshelves for a really long time is Roberto Bolaño's 2666. I have this installment, which has a dust jacket. It was... I believe now they combine them all into one version that has this jacket on it. But when it was originally released here, it had there are 3 books or 3 sections that comprise it. They divided each into different paperbacks. So that is the version of it that I have. It has really stunning design on every single one. So that would fit for sure. And it would definitely be a project to work on, but I've heard really great things about it. So maybe 2020. There's also Half a Life by V.S. Naipaul. I have another book by him as well, but this is the one that I would prioritize. So yeah, and I feel like I have a lot of Japanese, Chinese authors that I'm looking at for this. So I have a couple of authors from Africa. I'm researching Australia, and I needed somebody from India. So I found V.S. Naipaul and Madhuri Vijay, The Far Field. I know a lot of people on BookTube read this book last year, and I heard really great things about it. I'm very much looking forward to getting to this one as well. And, hey, it fits the prompt. Also from India, Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses. I read Midnight's Children in high school. I don't remember much about it at all, except that I loved it at the time. So I've always meant to read another book by him. This is, of course, the big one. And I feel like I should read Midnight's Children again at some point just to get that in. But I feel like this goal is a good excuse to make Salman Rushdie happen. I had to really stop myself and remind myself, think about South American authors. So I found Manuel Puig's Kiss of the Spider Woman on my shelves. This also fits the LGBTQ goal I had last year. Or not, because it's about a gay man. So it doesn't fit the goal I had last year. But it's a focus that I have in my own reading. So it kind of fits for that. I have seen the movie for this. I did not see the musical adaptation, and I have not read the book. So it would be good to get around to this as well. And then also in South America, we have, of course, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. The only book of his that I have read is 100 Years of Solitude. I have a copy of Love in the Time of Cholera. I would love to get to it. And going back to Africa, now, of course, he lives in North America now. But this is about his childhood in South Africa and very much about South Africa and the politics over there. So I'm going to count it. My goal, my rules. So there you go. Plus, I've heard really good things about it, and I just want to read it. And then there's The Fisherman by Chigozie Obioma. This was a finalist for the Booker Prize the year it was released. Orchestra of Minorities was a long list, I believe. Maybe was it short list? No, I think it was a long list. But this is the one I have in the house, and of the 2 books, this is the one that of Obioma's that I would really like to get to. So those are the ones that I have. Some other things I'm thinking of, some other things that have been recommended to me. Freshwater by Akwaeke Emezi. I know Akwaeke Emezi also has a book called Pet that is either middle grade or YA, so either one of those would fit. I was thinking of Stay With Me by Ayabami Adebayo, Mo Yan's short story collection Shifu, You'll Do Anything for a Laugh, Half a Lifelong Romance by Eileen Chang, The Girl Who Wrote Loneliness by Kyung Suk Shin. I have, like I said, I'm researching Australia books. I got some recommendations yesterday from somebody who left a lovely comment. I'm checking out some Australian booktube channels, including Jacqueline at 6 Minutes for Me, and Bear Reads Books is also in Australia, so he has some good recommendations for those. So I need to get some Australian representation in here, and I think I'm pretty good to go on that one. In terms of just general books that are outside my comfort zone, I mentioned Gravity's Rainbow. I think this is going to be the year where I try that. I've thought about Ulysses by James Joyce because I always hear that inspires so much in literature. So I feel like to be a well-rounded reader, I should read that. Will I get to it? I don't know. Because I mentioned that I have this really big roadblock with poetry, I have never read Max Porter, specifically Grief is the Thing with Feathers. I've heard great things about it, but because it so heavily involves poetry, my brain just wants to shut down every time I think about reading it. So maybe this year I will push myself, pick up a copy of that. I would also do Lanny. Incidentally, Jen Campbell named Lanny her #1 read of 2019, and her #1 read of 2018 was Fatima Farheen Mirza's A Place for Us, which, if you have followed at all, you know was my favorite read of this past year. So can Jen Campbell do it again? I don't know. We'll find out. Those are some things I'm thinking. If you have recommendations, you know what to do. Leave them down below. If you think there are any of these that I should just stay away from, let me know that as well. Anyway, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you for your time. If you're a subscriber, thank you for that. And I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.